So David, maybe to give people a little background, you and Brad Feld, started Techstars 10 years ago, roughly speaking?
Yeah, just about 10 years ago now. Thanks for having me, by the way. This is an awesome event. Really
Absolutely,
fun.
and you have been one of my role models. I think you guys, in addition to one other nameless incubator, gave us a lot of inspiration and ideas for how to get started. But I think, maybe to kind of point out some things that I think Techstars is doing differently and uniquely. You guys are all over the U.S., all over the world. You're not in Silicon Valley.
That's right. Except for right now.
Except for right now, yes, exactly. You guys have been working a lot with corporate strategics to expand investment around the world and in interesting verticals. And you guys are no stranger to doing lots of deals.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of the update. I mean, people obviously know 500 that are here. Similar components, right? We have the accelerator piece, which people
Absolutely.
know us for.
And we've done probably 30 or 40 investments together at least, maybe more.
Including
SendGrid.
And many others. But that's now, we run 25 of those around the world in different locations, mostly US and Europe.
25 separate programs around the world.
Yep.
Each of those are doing about 10 investments a year, roughly?
Yep, so scaled up to about 250 companies and growing through the Accelerator platform. And then the similar events platform, we have Startup Weekend.
You guys acquired Startup, or reacquired Startup Weekend, I guess?
Yeah,
It was birthed out of...
It's funny, it started out of Techstars, but then, 7-8 years later, right,
Right.
sort of acquired it into the organization. And so this is 1,000 of those that we put on a year to try to inspire folks towards entrepreneurship.
Right.
And then similarly, surround that with venture capital, about $300 million in venture capital that we manage.
And so you have maybe 150 million that's dedicated to Techstars network and investments, and another 150 through Bullet Time?
No, it's just sort of, if you think about holistically all the different vehicles we've had over 10 years. So there's venture funds, there's local investment funds in New York or London, right? Sort of local activity. We actually have funds that provide convertible notes as soon as companies get into Techstars. So it's all the different vehicles.
Got it. I guess maybe just to highlight a couple of investments. I know you've been successful. You were an early investor in Uber or SendGrid and Twilio, correct?
Twilio, yes.
Right.
I think both very early there. You were actually involved as an
advisor. You were in the seed round along with, I was at Founders Fund at the time.
Yeah, and of course the Uber angel round has been a blast to watch those guys go crazy, and hopefully SendGrid's our next one together that will do really well in IPO someday.
I think that might come to pass sooner than later, actually. Twilio is filed to go public. I think that's actually happening this week. A lot of parallels maybe between Twilio and SendGrid, both companies that really depend on developers as a lot of the primary channel into enterprise.
Yep, it's one of the things I've always invested in is infrastructure, right? Something that takes something hard on the internet and makes it easier, which is why I love Twilio and SendGrid when I first saw them.
Right. And I was fortunate to participate in the SendGrid seed round and then later in the Series A and B rounds. But could you tell us a little bit about the SendGrid story? Because I think it's really one of the signature Techstars investments, and I think they've actually published a blog post that says they might be going public sometime in the future.
Been a little aggressive. I mean, we hope that happens. I'm on the board there, so I'll be a little careful. But companies publish that they're around 100 million in revenue. It's an infrastructure company. If you think of Twilio as being the sort of phone-based stuff primarily, SendGrid is an equivalent in the email world. So billions of emails, about 2-3% of the world's email now flowing through the company.
2 or 3% of the world's email.
Yeah.
And legitimate how much of that
email.
is spam?
Importantly, legitimate email. Yes.
Yeah, so I think I met Isaac Saldana, the founder of SendGrid, back around 2009, I believe. I'm not sure when.
Yeah, that's when they did it. And it's funny. People think of 500 and YC and Techstars maybe competitive, but we do a lot of stuff together, right? And that's what seed investing is. So tons of common portfolio companies.
I think we try and manufacture as much controversy for PR purposes, but I think we've invested in probably over 100 companies that either came from Techstars or YC over the years. And so happy for your success as well as our own. You guys, in addition to SendGrid, have had some big wins recently, or at least looks like some big wins. I guess ClassPass is certainly one of those that might be considered a signature Techstars deal.
Yeah, I mean, there's dozens of companies. PillPack, some people have been reading about. There's some controversy around those guys. Companies like Localytics. I mean, there's lots of companies that are sort of, hundreds of millions in revenue and sort of getting there.
Right.
It takes a while, obviously, to get your big breakouts, but before really Twilio is the first sort of unicorn going public that I've been involved in.
Right.
I've been doing this for 10 years, so it just takes some time.
Takes a while, yeah. I think when we invested in Twilio, it was either fall of 2008 or spring of 2009, so it's been probably close to 8 years.
Yep.
What do you think maybe to step back a little bit, I know that YC was very successful in starting out in Boston, has now claimed Silicon Valley as its home, but you and Brad really made, Denver or Boulder area, I guess Boulder really, put it on the map, and then later New York before a lot of other folks went to New York, and now other places all over the world. Why did you guys choose to start outside the Valley or outside maybe traditional places where startups get started?
Yeah, so I think DNA is a part of the answer. It's just who we are. But I think the reason we started Techstars in Boulder is because that's where we live. So pretty straightforward. Wanting it to be a better ecosystem, finding a model that does seem to have an impact, right? Really engages mentors, creates angel investors where there were none. Right. And we took that to Boston in 2009, and it worked there too. And so we've just been on a march trying to bring it to more communities. Around the world. We're now throughout the U.S. and Europe, not here, as we can talk about. But the idea is tying those communities together is a very powerful idea, this notion of a more global ecosystem of mentorship and support for, entrepreneurs. And you guys also started kind of this, global accelerator network. I think originally there was, some set of cities which you guys were making, signature Techstars efforts, but also through affiliates, other networks in lots of places, both U.S. and international. Yeah, so GAN exists today as a standalone nonprofit that we spun out, but it was a pretty simple, you probably experienced the same. We were getting calls every day. How do you do an accelerator? We want to do that, right? We want to do an accelerator in Cleveland. And I said, well, here's how we do it. Give first, right? We try to be helpful, but that got to be a full-time job, and so we hired a guy and created a nonprofit to do it, and that's now got, dozens or hundreds of member organizations. So you guys have to be one of the largest investing organizations in the world, maybe 150 or more people at this point? Yeah, we're about 150 people and very distributed as a company. So if you come to Boulder, you'll see maybe 30. Okay. Right, so the people are out in the markets that we run in. And how many of those folks are outside the U.S. right now? It's about 25%, so about 75% U.S. And how did you guys get started on, developing the partnerships with corporate entities and working together on building vertical programs? I know you're, very active in London. We work with 2 or 3 of your organizations in Europe. Yep. So we run accelerators with partners like Barclays, Virgin, and Virgin Media in London, Ford, many others. We were first approached actually by Microsoft. They sort of looked at our model and said, gee, we want to do something like that in Seattle. So we built a program for them as an experiment. And we found
that was with Xbox it
was around Connect at the time.
Virtual Connect,
this thing, And there were a lot of cool companies that were leveraging that, and they wanted to be helpful. But what we've really found is powerful about it is teaching these corporations how to work with entrepreneurs in a way that's, sort of not take first, but give first. Yep. And hopefully that's a meta impact that this activity will have on them. What do you see as challenges for startups and corporates to work together, and what do you see as kind of the opportunities? Well, I think many of the companies that approach us to partner with us with the accelerators come at it with an attitude that needs adjustment. Yeah. And the ones that really get it are the ones we try to work with. They're really thinking of, how can I have the right to buy this company, or how can I have the right to do business with this company? We tell them, you don't want that. You're going to get the worst entrepreneurs. They don't want to buy the company? You don't want the right to buy the company. It's an important nuance. You don't want to contract all this stuff. You just want to be helpful, right? Provide some funding, provide space, seems really mentorship. Zen, right? Yeah, and a lot of them don't get it. If you love something, set it free. That's right. If it comes back, then you can acquire it. I'm from Boulder, so you understand. But I think that's the idea, is when they can be taught that they just need to be helpful, and then they get every opportunity in the world with that company. What do you think the superpowers are for corporate entities, or how can corporates sort of be valuable in a world where there's tons of capital from VCs and angels and others? Yeah, I mean, they can kingmake. I mean, my favorite example, everybody's seen the BB-8 character, the little droid. That's one of our companies called Sphero. Was a perfectly interesting company doing tens of millions in revenue. Went to the Disney Accelerator that we run. Disney comes in and says, hey, we have this idea. You know, we got this new character. Bob Iger sits down with him and says, you know, what if you created this robot that could roll? It wouldn't just be a ball that you play with your smartphone, right? It would be BB-8 a character. And you know, the company's trajectory is just completely different. So I think these companies can add IP, know-how, distribution capability.
Yeah, so it seems like, you know, customers, certainly distribution channels to customers is one area of you know, benefit that, you know, corporates may have that VCs don't. And certainly the IP, you know, for a company like Disney, which has tremendous amounts of content, tremendous amounts of IP now from both Pixar, from ESPN, from all kinds of different, you know, media and content networks.
Yeah, plus, I got to have a website with, you know, like a lightsaber on it, which was like a childhood dream. So it was cool to have that website, you know, to advertise the opportunity.
What's the downside of that relationship, or what challenges do you see that you try and, you know, help them work around or avoid, both startups and corporates?
Well, I think again, the upfront, helping educate them that, you know, you don't actually want to have all of these options in the agreements you have with these companies. You want to just be helpful. And
options means board seats, blocking rights?
The right to buy the company, the right to do business with the company, the right to invest in the company. Many of them, most of them ask for those things, and it's an education process to get them to understand you actually don't want that.
Right.
Right.
Any concerns about the fact that they have access to information and startups might be doing things that actually compete with that corporate entity?
Yep, we talked to them a lot about that too, and the idea being, you know, when you're going to pick a company, right, make sure that the intent is to help, right, and not to somehow take from that company, because that just creates a very bad reputation for you, just like it would for any other investor.
So when you guys get the chance to work with a company like Barclays or others, I mean, obviously they bring a lot to the table. How do you structure that relationship? Are they, you know, paying you to put those programs together? Are they investing in you as a fund or in the companies?
You know, our normal model is that we have local ecosystem LPs. So if we go to New York, it's 30 investors in New York that come together. This is just replacing that capital. And so it's the cost of running the actual program, right? And their goal is be around the activity, see what comes out of it that's interesting, maybe have an opportunity to do something with those companies, buy them or whatever. And you have seen, you know, acquisitions that happen that obviously are not pre-contracted. So I think, you know, it's really about making sure that the partner's good, has the right intent. And then inside the program, you know, usually it's not on campus, it's off campus somewhere. With Nike, we did it in Portland in the Pearl District. Right. You know, you get, you know, the executives coming by and hanging out on the couches. So it's not, you know, high security corporate feeling, right? It just feels like it's an entrepreneurial vibe around that company, and it really attracts the right executives.
Got it. When you guys are looking at new regions or new verticals to go after, what's kind of your framework for how you make those decisions? You guys are in 25 geographies now. I assume you're planning to do more in the future. Yeah.
One of the things I think has been really interesting for, you know, for the capital we put around the system is our LPs, you know, see the opportunity and the performance of what we have done, and we believe there's an opportunity to do much more globally. So, you know, I've been fortunate to work with folks like Morgan Stanley and Utemco and Vesco as LPs. And, you know, for them, they're interested in the international opportunity too. I think, you know, I probably see you more.
We certainly believe in that, but I know there's a lot of folks who are still skeptical, particularly about exits and liquidity internationally.
You're out there. I see you more out there than here, right? I mean, you know,
That's because Christine does all this stuff
that's
here.
Right.
She's got the show here. They tend to think that I work better not being nearby.
There's huge arbitrage opportunity, right, to help companies enter this market, right? There's so many great companies around the world that are undervalued, and I think, you know, the entrepreneurship is not just going to come from one place in the future, and that's, I think, part of our DNA.
Any concerns about how you get those companies to exits internationally?
I think a lot of them end up opening offices here, right, and building networks and relationships here. So that's one of the things you're uniquely positioned to do. I think we have some of that too. You know, companies we see wanting to come to New York or Boston or plug into the network, where they feel like, you know, immediately just by being here, they're more noticed, maybe more valued. So I think that's the arbitrage opportunity at scale for a company.
So I was encouraged to ask a question about how Techstars and 500 are different or similar, but I'm going to take a different tack and ask you how Y Combinator and Techstars are different or similar. And maybe in particular, some blog post by Sam, I think maybe a few months back, about the YC fellowship program and how everyone should just wait for YC to pick them until they jump into an accelerator program.
It's interesting, right? I mean, I think they're based here, you're based here, but you're reaching out to the world and doing things for the world and living in those communities. I think we're doing that too, trying to be a part.
I think we're squished between your two models. I think YC's here, you guys are everywhere else, and we're trying to figure out which of those two we want to be.
Okay, fair enough. But I think the idea that people have to come here, right, to do their program. They're starting to realize, well, maybe we need to actually reach out and offer what we do to more people. That's something that I think we both believed in for a long time.
So bring the capital to the entrepreneur instead of expecting the entrepreneur to come to the capital.
Well, be a part of the ecosystem, right? Be part of the community and try to tie those communities together, which is a very powerful idea.
Yeah, and Brad Feld is founder of Foundry Partners, but also was critically involved in getting Techstars off the ground. You guys have both been, I think, promoters of community outside the Valley and really seeing what you and Brad built in Boulder in a place that wasn't really even, I would say, a top 10 or top 20 MTA, and built it into one of the more substantial startup ecosystems in the U.S.
Yeah, I think it's usually like Colorado's fourth or fifth now in venture capital, and Brad and Founder Group have a lot to do with that.
But punching way above their weight.
Yeah, I think it's the bridges that have been built to capital, right? And I like to say, people sometimes perceive us as anti-Silicon Valley. It's not at all the case. We're just kind of pro everywhere else. We believe that great companies can be built all over the world, and already are if you look closely.
What's your take on other geographies in the U.S. outside Silicon Valley and maybe other geographies around the world? What's top 2 or 3 cities in the U.S. you find to be interesting, and top 2 or 3 cities outside the U.S.? Well,
probably it's not a huge surprise that there's a lot of really amazing stuff going on in places like Boston and New York.
Right.
To me, LA is a fascinating ecosystem.
Yeah, I feel like LA is the undiscovered story, although maybe that's being discovered in the last year or two.
Yeah, we have multiple programs there, and spend a lot of time there. Some great investors there that really get it.
SendGrid came out of the Southern California area.
Right. That's right. I mean, if there was more support for SendGrid there, it wouldn't have moved to Boulder right?
Come to Boulder.
Well, luckily there wasn't at the time, and we took advantage of that.
You guys were one of the first folks to really bring the accelerator model to New York. I think Techstars New York is probably one of the premier accelerators in that region. What do you think is unique or different about New York than maybe Silicon Valley or other places?
Well, it's just, there's such diversity, and there's so much,
diversity
different
in New
industries.
York?
Different industries. Right? It's like not everybody speaks startup. You come here, and it's like you're walking down the street, and all you hear is product market fit, right? Yeah.
AR,
like
VR.
literally, I was just walking here, and it's everyone talking about internet stuff, and there it's a lot of Wall Street and fashion and other things. So I think you just you don't see necessarily so much consumer facing stuff, and it's just a different mix, I think.
How about outside the U.S.? Where's your 3 favorite places?
I'm a huge fan of what's going on in Berlin.
Really? Okay.
I've been spending time there. We have
I think that was Jess Erickson whooping it up in our crowd.
We have 2 programs there. We're in a program with Metro, which is a corporate there, and then we have a city, Techstars Berlin there. And
you have 3 programs in London, if I'm
3. That's right.
Not mistaken.
That's right. And so just, I think London, people sort of get, right, that it's really changed in the last 5 years.
A lot.
Berlin, I think, has a feel of, just a place that's up and coming, like lots of talent. Yeah.
Okay, so London and Berlin are maybe easy choices for Europe. Where's your other, city of the future, geek city of the future outside, the U.S.?
There's going to be some interesting stuff in the Nordics going on. I know you've spent some time there.
Yes, absolutely.
Lots of interesting background and history there.
So little sunlight, you can't do anything but code.
That's right. I don't know. There's places out of the way that people don't even know about, like Waterloo in Ontario, Canada. Amazing stuff going on there. Like mind-blowing stuff going on there.
Definitely have some Canucks here in the crowd. One of our partners, Sanjay Segal, is actually
Shout out for Waterloo. I mean, it's incredible source of talent. I think, a lot of it flows here today, right? And it won't always do that.
Yep. I guess, you've certainly been around the industry a lot. What do you see as different about accelerators these days? Or let's just say, if you were to start an accelerator program today, what would you do differently, better, or, not trying to be, in the juggernauts, which are YC and Techstars and others?
Probably today I would definitely focus on a specific domain, right?
Focus on a vertical.
Yeah, find something that you have a key advantage in, because there are thousands of these things today, and I think there's a few that people sort of know and respect and have the track records. And it's very hard to create a new one today that's going to have enough scale to be meaningful.
How many investments do you think you need to make to find a unicorn?
Let's see, if I do the math, 200, 250 is so far what I'm seeing.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a guarantee of
No,
one?
No, but if I take the 1,000 companies I'm involved in, right, I think there's 4 in there.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
We know of a couple, right?
Yeah.
I may not know what they all are, but I know there's a set that probably will produce some.
What's enough investments per fund that you think you've got plenty of diversification to hit the target?
Well, if you're talking about traditional...
starting at seed stage or accelerator.
I don't know why anybody would run a seed fund without at least 50 investments in it, personally. And I'm a LP in probably 15 microfunds, and that's the advice I give them all.
So not less than 50 and potentially up to 250 is kind of your ballpark?
Well, in a fund, right, I would say 50, but I think, expect to maybe have to invest in a multiple of that to find an actual billion-dollar company.
Do you think that there's a different perspective about a large portfolio or the spray and pray approach than there was 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's, when you look at, I'm sure your data is very similar. We're funding, less than 1% of what we see, and we're doing it with like $100,000. So we built a platform that allows us to do that low risk, right, high velocity, reasonable prices. We're actually, you and I, largely immune to this idea that everybody's overpaying for startups.
We certainly, right? Because of the accelerator approach and because of the international approach, our average entry point is probably sub 4 million.
That's right.
Maybe yours might be lower.
Ours is even lower because it's not so much
not
here,
in the
maybe.
Bay Area, right?
And so I think those things are responsible investing at scale. It's to me, not at all spray and pray. I have a person on the ground in New York seeing 1,000 companies picking 10. Right. Are there 10 interesting companies in New York? For sure.
Yeah.
Are there 10 in Berlin? For sure.
Right.
Right. And so that's the model we've chosen to scale with.
Thanks, David. Really appreciate your time here today, and congrats on all this, all the amazing stuff. I hope that SendGrid is on the horizon, and I'm fortunate and hopeful that Twilio is happening this week.
Thanks for having me, and it's been awesome to watch you guys rock and roll and scale too. So amazing impact you're having.
We're on the same delusion together. Let's hope we're correct.